With me today is David Keene. He's recognized as one of the chief spokesmen for conservative principles in politics, and he's been central to the Buckley legacy. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
David, what is fusionism and Buckley? What is that all about?
Well, Bill Buckley is really the man who envisioned and put together the philosophical and political coalition that makes up the modern conservative movement. From the very beginning, we had free market economists. We had all kinds of people that were arguing as this movement began. We had everything from monarchists to objectivists and the like. And what Bill did, along with the others at National Review, was to take the three main strains of conservatism at that point.
What were those three main strains?
The main strains were anti-communism. Now we'd call it national defense conservatives, but the anti-communist element, that was their primary interest. Then there were what we call then traditionalists. Now we'd call them social conservatives, who were interested in the moral order and the like. And then finally,
religiosity is part of that.
Right. Well, it was, it's more than that, but that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the free market libertarian wing of the movement. And what Bill and those around him, principally Frank Meyer, who was also at National Review, came up with with this idea of fusionism, that these people in these three groups had much more in common and were facing common threats from big intrusive government and from secularism than they had in terms of their differences. And so that they ought to work together and could in fact work together. And he put them together. And that became the modern movement. We now hear talk about the three-legged stool of conservatism, which are the social conservatives, the economic conservatives, and the national defense conservatives. What he really found out in the process was not that they agreed on everything, but that they agreed on a lot of things, and that on those things they could work together in coalition, and they have since the 1960s.
Wasn't anti-communism the rallying cry?
Anti-communism was the existential threat that they all believed they faced. If you were a religious conservative, and if the Marxist-Leninists took over the world, you knew you were done. If you believed in free markets, obviously you were gone. And sovereignty was gone. So they were, as Dan Quayle once said, they were the glue that held this together. But it was more than that, because it wasn't just the threat of international communism. It was the general threat of collectivism, big government, intrusive government, and the state supplanting the individual. That doesn't require somebody in Moscow. That happens in Washington. And all of these wings faced that common enemy and still do.
But with the fall of the Berlin Wall in '89, didn't that end?
Not at all.
Then what's taken its place today?
Well, what's taken its place within the legitimate movement is that, and this is that most conservatives believe that the United States remains free because it's strong enough to protect its interests, its legitimate national interests. They believe we live in a dangerous world, and I think the evidence suggests that they have a point. And that if you're going to live in that world, you better be ready to protect yourself. But most of the effort and most of the threat, the immediate threat that conservatives sense to their values, their institutions, and what they would like, today come from Washington, with the regulatory state, with the threats to free markets, with all of the kinds of things that are going on. And you see it in the news every single day. The movement is as threatened now as it was then. The threats change, the movement doesn't change, and the values that these people share and the concerns that they share continue to be the same.
David Keene, thanks for being here, and looking forward to hearing your speech.
My pleasure.